quite excited about today's video. So these are spores. I'm very excited for this video because I have wanted to dabble in the Japanese mold spore koji game for a really long time. I've wanted to make my own miso for a really long time, but after reading the steps, and it takes 6 months to age, and potentially it could all go wrong and something could go bad, and so that's like time down the drain, money and hopes and dreams all over. So when I was looking for the spores for my miso, I found this place called Fermentation EU, and they had another interesting mold. They had another interesting koji called A. Luchenesis, and when I was reading it, I was like, oh, it has citric notes that taste like green apple and lemon, and I was like, ooh, like, ooh. Wouldn't that be really neat to have my miso taste like that? And so in the comments that people kept on talking about this Citric Koji water and how they were using it as a replacement for sake, like a non-alcoholic replacement for sake, for white wine. And I was looking around for it and I was like, I've never heard of this before. Like, what is this? Like, maybe I could start off on this and then play around with, mixing it with soybeans later. And so when I was in Spain, I happened to be in this cafe that had the Noma'S fermentation book there. And I was like, oh, okay, like, let me just look through this. And when I flipped, it turned to the Citric Water Koji page, Citric Koji Water page, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. This is what that person was talking about. And so what I guess is the claim to fame for this A. Luchenesis spore is that it was showcased in the Noma'S fermentation book, and supposedly is really hard to get, so I'm really lucky that I'm on this side of the continent and being able to locate it. What I'm gonna do today is actually I'm going to describe the process, but it's over many days. I'm going to show you how I made this Citric Koji water. We're going to try it at the end of the video, so that will be interesting. And I'll describe the process to you and kind of doing it in like a home environment. I think it was much more difficult, and it was really hard to control for things. There were some things that I did for video that I thought was pretty, but what I ended up doing was completely something else that kind of fit the home better. So we're gonna start off by sprinkling the spores onto the barley and then making it happy so that it will grow on the barley first. So we talked about the spore needing to be happy first. So this spore inoculation process is just putting the spore onto its food source so that it'll grow and get nice and happy. And only after this can you put it with things like soybeans or like make additional stuff with it. So usually you can do this with like barley, with rice, some kind of a grain that has had its like hull and the shells removed so that the spore can easily feed on, I don't know, all of the sugars or whatnot. And so I left the barley overnight in water so that it would be easier to steam. And the reason that we're steaming it is because this barley should not be wet at all. It should not be overdone either. So a good 45-minute steam should do the trick. these are the spores that I got. This is the one that we're gonna use. This is kind of the apple acidic, the one that they talked about in Noma. So best before January 2023, product of Japan. February, product of Japan. So I thought this one I would just make normal miso with, and then maybe experiment a little bit with this. So
So this bit's a little bit of an extra step. The fermentation company said that because their spores were extra potent, it's easier to spread it if you just mix it with another starch. So I have rice flour here that you're just supposed to cook and heat up so that any of the maybe microorganisms die off. And then you sprinkle those spores into this. And so you have more of like a powder to work with so that you can easily sprinkle it over the barley.
this you can probably store in the fridge as well. Just want to mix everything up. Okay. All right. Now, just remove the barley straight from the pot to here. After the barley has been cooked, boiled, you have to cool it down to about, what did they say, like 83 degrees Fahrenheit. So this is almost there. Just need to cool it so that it is not too hot for the spores. They said 82 Fahrenheit, 28 Celsius. I mean, I don't know how I'm going to maintain that. I think outside is actually quite cool, but inside's a little warm. So I'm just gonna mix this and cool it down. So this needs to be in like 28 degrees Celsius weather and 70 to 75% humidity, which I don't have a dedicated machine to do that. So I'm not sure how exactly I'm going to do this. So if you just want to inoculate the koji, I I think this is a 36-hour deal. If you're making citric water, I think it's a 42-hour deal. So, and then I think in between you do something, but we will monitor it. I will stick this in a place that is about 28 degrees Celsius. Yes, good luck.
Okay, so what I opted to do was put it in the air fryer because there was a dehydrator option and it was easier than just bringing out my other one.
Now I'm going to tell you reality versus video. So I ended up getting one of these wooden boxes because in Japan they would have used cedar wood because it's supposed to absorb excess liquid from the barley or from whatever that much better. And so I got one of these because I could not fit this into my dehydrator. Like it wasn't tall enough. My air fryer, you know, it had these two trays, and at the same time the temperature was low enough. Actually it was like 30 degrees Celsius. And I guess this particular strain likes it just a wee bit cooler, like 28, 29. Part of my mind is thinking like, okay, like they used to do this without an actual, you know, like machine. I'm sure that it will work, but I don't know. So anyways, I put it onto these trays and I lined it with 2 linen cloths that I soaked in water. And by the way, everything was sanitized because I was very worried that other things would grow on it. So everything was like put into boiling water, everything was sanitized. What ended up happening, as you might expect, is that in an air fryer, it's so ventilated that it really dried this out. But at the same time, it was the only thing that would let me control for the temperature. So every hour I would spray this, and 42 hours, I couldn't do that all the time. So what I ended up doing, and I didn't want to do this, but like, I also didn't want it to be contaminated. And I didn't want to use plastic, but I don't know, there were so many things. What I ended up doing was, because it kept on drying out, was I sprayed a fair bit of water on the cloth without it dripping. I stuck this into, so I have like a water boiler room. It's very small. And so I stuck it in there because the temperature was literally perfect. It was like about 28, maybe like 29 Celsius. And so I stuck it in there, but like it's obviously it's very like, maybe it's like dusty in there. And so what I would do is like every 12 hours or so, I would take it out and then I would open it and I would like give it a smell, make sure that nothing was off or like looking weird. That's actually what I ended up doing. Okay, so this is hour 40. See like little spores or fuzzy bits around it. And yeah, it kind of does smell like wine, you know, like when they say like, oh, does it smell like apples? Does it smell like lemons? Yeah, it does, but then it also kind of has this more mature, maybe even like a slightly bitter smell, which is exactly what they had said when you leave it for 40 hours. Just moving everything over to a wooden box because this goes into the fridge for 12 hours now. But I just tried one of these because I think you can try them because that's what they said. It's really, really sweet. Like, I was kind of too nervous to really like see if there were notes of anything, but it smells sweet, like something a little bit tangy, but something sweet. These have been cooled for about 12 hours. And we're doing them in batches. So the whole thing is going to take about 2.2 kilos of water, which 8 or 9 cups of water. Definitely smells of maybe like a fermented so we're gonna stick this into the freezer now, and then once it is frozen, we will thaw it out, but then strain it out at the same time. Okay, so I opted for now 2 bowls, and you can kind of see it'll melt into that. I just need to find 2 really big lids because I'm supposed to keep these covered. You're supposed to do it in the refrigerator slowly, but I don't have enough room for that. So it'll be a cover and a lid in a cold London kitchen. Okay, so we're just gonna try this. They say can stay in the refrigerator for 5 days, or you can freeze it. I had already tasted it 5 days ago when it came out, so I'm just going to taste it now. Okay, yeah. Cheers. It tastes so much better today than it did 5 days ago. Woo! That is quite nice. Okay. Oh, wow. I had tried this out 5 days ago, and like when it was fresh, and then when I tasted it, it kind of just tasted like a very boring wine. Like there's no flavor. Like it tasted very, I think they say like umami, but I also felt like it was just like very mature, very bland. And so 5 days later, went so weird. Okay, so if anybody has made barley water before, or like likes drinking the, I think like they have like a Robinson's, just mixing barley water and perhaps a bit of sugar, keeping in mind that there was no sugar in this. That backdrop of just barley water, that is there. But then, yeah, at the beginning, well, throughout, there's also this kind of like ever so slightly tangy note. You know how there are some tastes where like you can taste it on your tongue, and then there's some where it travels through your nose. So the one that's through your nose, there is something like sour and citric about it. Like people describe it as lemon and green apple. I'm not really that good like that, but there is something like citric about it. In the Noma book, they said just use it for like a white wine substitute. Would I use it for sake? I think it's very barley, but yeah, like I feel like yes, you could. Hold on. So maybe. With sake, I mean, you can definitely tell that it's alcoholic. you can smell it. Whereas I feel like with the koji water, you cannot. So this is the sake. This is so sweet. The sake actually has some like citric notes and it's actually quite sweet. Obviously it's alcoholic, like you can kind of taste a little bit of that burn. It's very soft though. This is softer. Very, like you could drink this. This is a lot just stronger in every way. I don't know, like I don't even know if I've made this right. So who knows? Maybe I'm sure your batch will be a lot different. So I hope you all enjoyed this because I know I did. You know how some people like really like making like faux meat recipes? Could care less about that. Like I think that this, like fermentation and I want to say harvesting. What's the word that I'm looking for? Where like you go out to the forest and you just like pick things and you eat them. That in terms of like flavor for me and like discovery is really where it's at. Like you want to find flavors that are like meaty or that can like mimic, you know, the foods that you used to eat. That is all in plants, that is all in fermentation. So very excited today.